Start this first Professor Imtiaz Ahmed Memorial Lecture. I request the Chair Professor Afroz Alam, Speaker Professor Vivek Kumar Sahab, and discussant Dr. K.M. Ziauddin to take their respective chairs on the dais. So this session will be chaired by Professor Afroz Alam, Head Department of Political Science at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. Friends, let me give a very brief introduction of the speaker, Professor Vivek Kumar, and then we'll start with the lecture. Professor Vivek Kumar is a professor of sociology and a public intellectual and former chairperson of Center for the Study of Social Systems, School of Social Sciences at JNU. His specialization is methodology of social sciences, Dalit studies, sociology of South Asia. He has been a co-coordinator of Global Studies Program and Ambedkar Chair Professor in Sociology instituted by Ministry of Empowerment and Social Justice, Government of India. As a recipient of Fulbright Teachers Fellowship, Professor Vivek Kumar has been the visiting professor in the Department of Sociology at Columbia University, New York, USA. He has been also visiting professor at Humboldt University in Berlin. As a DUT and UGC fellow, Professor Vivek Kumar has been a visiting faculty at the Humboldt University, Germany. His publications include Caste and Democracy in India, an edited volume, Dynamics of Change and Continuity in the Age of Globalization, India's Roaring Revolution, Dalit Leadership in India. His seminal articles include How Egalitarian in Indian Sociology. He has completed a research project, Social Status and Socialist Attitudes in India, a study of Indian college students. With Harvard University, USA, and UBC, he has done this research project. He has also been quite frequently visiting abroad. He has delivered lectures at British Columbia University, Simon Fraser University, Toronto University in Canada. Well, friends, Professor Vivek Kumar is one of the rare academics who very audaciously put his views on various issues of pressing concerns in Indian society. His most recent work, as also I actually inaugural session referred to, Kamzor Work Ka Samaj is very recently come out. He has edited this volume, and that shows and indicate his subaltern approach to the studies in Indian sociology. So with these words, I welcome you, sir, and I invite you to deliver your lecture.
It is certainly a privilege for me to chair a session where a man of original ideas is about to deliver the first Professor Imtiaz Ahmed Memorial Lecture. There are scholars who are known by their work, their ideas, and there is a scholar with us who is a master storyteller. And the person is none other, Professor Vivek Kumar. I'm sure what we are going to hear from him will be a treat for us. And he will not only keep your attentions engaged with whatever he is going to say, rather he will provoke your mind to think beyond the boundaries with his propositions, as he has always done throughout the period he is speaking on the topic of his interest. So with this, I welcome Vivek ji for this discourse, and for also thankful for agreeing to deliver this lecture. Thank you. I now request Vivek ji for his kind words.
So at the outset, let me thank the organizers, dear friend and Professor Zia, for inviting me for such a prestigious lecture, though it is inaugural. But I think one get known by associating with the name itself. I think, getting associated with Professor Imtiaz Ahmad and speaking of him, I think I am adding some laurels to myself rather than actually throwing light to him. So thank you very much, and I congratulate also the Department of Sociology, and as respected Honorable Vice Chancellor had argued just in the morning that how this place is becoming vibrant with the ideas and discussions and debates. So I think this lecture is a befitting honor for actually a person like Professor Imtiaz Ahmad. Though I don't hold myself anyway near to give any honor to give this lecture that I am really worthy enough, but I think Professor Arvinder Ansari must have definitely provoked them, because she invited me to speak on Professor Imtiaz Ahmad in Indian Sociological Society's RC, that was minority, and I spoke. I think that might have made some sense. So thank you so much, Professor Arvinder Ansari, for being the bridge also. Friends, I am at loss of the words, because I know in the morning you have already heard such a profound lecture by Hilal, Professor Hilal, and after that you have also heard by Professor Arvinder Ansari for actually her deliberation, association, and her understanding. So my work has been cut out, but for the, I think, young minds, for the young listeners, I think it's a really must to hear the life journey of an academician who has an identity. I think if you really go by the brief biography of, Professor Imtiaz Ahmad, I think that gives you lots and lots of courage. That's where I try to engage with him, that, throughout his life, the struggle is not in the last leg, but in the beginning itself. So I will begin with that, though you have already heard with other speakers. So I have divided this lecture in three parts. One is the biographical sketch from a very humble student, a researcher, to a Donny, professor. So how that journey has taken place, that is one. Second, I have also tried to look young Imtiaz Ahmad. What is actually the notion of young Imtiaz Ahmad, how he challenges the dawning of the profession in sociology. And last but not the least, the intellectual, the elderly Imtiaz, who is trying to talk about Indian sociology. So friends, actually, I have this opinion and I have expressed that Professor Imtiaz Ahmad has been victim of reductionism. And victim of reductionism in the sense that he has been reduced only to a person who has studied, caste or stratification in Islam, and that was the path-breaking work. But friends, I do not buy this argument that he has only done actually work on caste. Or even when actually I listen, people talk about that he has written a lot of things on Islam. But I treat him as a sociology without any epithet, suffix or prefix. He is a sociologist, an Indian sociologist. That's what I want to treat, and I want to talk about that as an Indian sociologist, how actually with an identity you face the profession and institutional mechanism. To begin with, I begin with the biography, the first part. Professor Imtiaz Ahmad was born on 28th April 1940 in eastern UP. Some people talk about Gonda district, but his father belonged to Kathula, that is actually Allahabad area. And his father was posted in jail, so he used to quip that I was in jail. I was born in jail, so I was jailed, So that is one of the very beginning aspect he used to tell us, and we will used to look at क्या बोल रहे हैं sir, jail में हो गए by पैदा होते ही. So no, it is mentioned that by a sociologist that his ancestors belonged to the village Katula in Allahabad. Now let's come to the graduation part. Professor Imtiaz Ahmed did his graduation from prestigious Christian College from Lucknow, and I actually have this connection because I am also from Lucknow, and I am from Lucknow. I've seen actually how Christian College was so prestigious at that time, and I'm also from Lucknow University. His PG then actually completed in MA Social Anthropology in the 1959 from Lucknow University, and then did his actually enrolled for PhD in Delhi University. Now, there is an interesting story when I was talking to Professor Uman, Professor T.K. Uman, another great sociologist of India. They both were competitors for the same scholarship in Delhi University. M.N. Srinivas was, interviewing both of them, and you will not know that, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed prevailed over T.K. Uman. So T.K. Uman did not get the scholarship, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, and that was 250 rupees scholarship UGC had instituted. Uman argued that, look, I can't stay in Delhi. And, I think in some mind, actually, he must be having that I'm a second feeder, so why should I stay? So he might have left also, but he did not tell that. Now, after actually enrolling in Delhi University, and M.N. Srinivas admitted Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, he did his MPhil as actually Professor Arvinder was telling you in the morning, but actually, before completing his PhD, he went to Fulbright Fellowship, 1967 and 68. And he was a Fulbright Fellow in the Department of Anthropology, University of Chicago. Now, this is a very fruitful academic stay. Why it is very fruitful? Because he writes himself that the idea of the book, Caste and Social Stratification Among Muslims, originated in the course of conversation in Chicago University with McKim Marriott. So, at a very young age, he was interacting with, Donnie of the social scientists like McKim Marriott. We all know. Now, after that, he became a visiting professor, 68 to 70, at University of Missouri, that is Columbia. Some people say Missouri, So please don't misunderstand. There is no University of Missouri. And after that, he became a ICSR fellowship from 1970 to 72. He was a fellow at the Indian Council of Social Science Research. Now, and then he was appointed at Jawaharlal Nehru University in the Department of Political Science. Now, friends, today, in this era of, say, new education policy, people are talking about interdisciplinarity. Now, you imagine this person being trained in social anthropology and then actually started doing his PhD in sociology, lands up in a department of political science. Now, you can say that how much challenge he might have faced, but he actually came in flying colors, and he lived there till 2002 after completing the superannuation. I am leaving the turbulent times, just pause, because when you people remember, we only remember good things of the people, and therefore actually you don't think that I don't know. I know that, but I am just trying to skip that. Now, this is the fifth stage of actually you can say young Imtiaz Ahmed. Now, sixth stage of the development, when I have dwelt upon Professor Imtiaz Ahmed as an academic journey, so you can see that there are 6 layers from graduation, PhD, Fulbright Fellowship, visiting professor, and then as a teacher. So these are 6 very important, journey. So, no, the young generation, gets, they become very restless as soon as actually they say that, sir, I am not getting a job. But you see that how a person has really toiled to get into the university space. So I think those who are doing their PhD, those who are doing their MA, they should be convinced that, look, you will have to face a long struggle. You might be very, say, lucky, but usually there is a gestation period which is demonstrated. Now, coming to the most fruitful academic year of actually Professor Imtiaz Ahmad, I hold from 1960s to 1984. These are 24 years as the most prolific academic year of his life, starting from his first article as a 26-year-old student in 1966, Notes on Sociology of India, the American Sociologist, Volume 1, and the second article, Sociology for India, 1972, Contributions to Indian Sociology, Volume 6. And then for an elaborate, edited edited volumes on the social and cultural life of the Muslims in India. Now, I hold these 4 volumes not as an actually explanation to the community, but what I will do later on, how the methodological, conceptual, and theoretical basis which he includes in these volumes and that try to problematize. It is not that he's taking theory, he's taking method, and he's taking actually concepts like that as it is, incorporating it in the terms. No, but rather he is challenging them. And therefore, these 4 volumes become very important. Within say 8 years or 9 years, these 4 volumes came. And then I come to number of articles which I am not taking. One, I think, article is very important. That is Women in Politics in Devika Jain edited volume, Indian Women, Delhi Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. 1984, The Political Economy of Communalism, and 1971 article, Caste Mobility Movements in Northern India. I think these are very important articles, and also the social history review, if you look at, these have been published not only from India, but also from abroad. Now, the moot question is that why did Professor Imtiaz Ahmad had to take upon himself the responsibility to produce such literature which could cover the whole life world of Muslims in India? I think that is the question which we should ask as a sociologist. Now, it is in this context I would bring his, contributions to sociology, and I will also try to evaluate 2 things. One, a plea for comprehensive sociology of India. That is his normal plea, that I want a comprehensive sociology of India. It should not be segmental. It should not be dominated only by one group of the society. And second, he has used a very provocative epithet, perverty of sociology of India. Perverty of sociology of India. I think, therefore, we will look into that. However, before I come to dwell upon this, let me look the young Imtiaz Ahmad. No, I think let me dwell a little bit more on his biography, because I think this is only education part which I have done. The second part of this biography is that he is not only an armchair academician. Rather, if you look at Professor Imtiaz Ahmad played a role of public intellectual. though at that time that epithet, public intellectual, is not taken, very, very candidly in our society or in our academia, that public intellectuals do not matter. But now I think it has acquired a very different prestige. Now, if you say that, how can we really, what is the empirical evidence that he became a public intellectual? And I give us a few of them. One, that he took an, a assignment with an NGO in 2004 as its chairman, and just after his retirement, he did not remain actually in the home. Rather, he went into and he became the chairman of that NGO and remained actually there till June 19, 2023, when he breath lost. Now, through this NGO, he published number of reports, but as an academician, he also edited a volume through this NGO. And this actually is important, volume, because as an academician, he was interacting with a lot of academicians, so he called them. Now, this volume, if you see, have 15 articles contributed by sociologists, political scientists, historians, literary personalities or literature expert, social worker, educational or educationist, gender studies, and also, some social, social elites as such. Now, this article, this book, name of the book is Dalit Assertion. Dalit assertion in society, literature, and history. So that means he was trying to cover the most of the issues of the Dalits. But what is more important for us, that Professor Imtiaz Ahmed here actually tried to problematize the term arzals, and actually in this he was trying to argue that how Mr. Ali was using the term, Anwar Ali was using the term pasmanda. So he was aware of the term pasmanda, but he says that how political people, they are using the term for even those castes which are not as stigmatized as they should be to be called as Dalits. And therefore, pasmanda and Dalit Muslims are being used simultaneously. And therefore, he had given the title of his chapter, Can There Be a Category of Dalit Muslims? That is actually a hypothesis he developed. He did not answer, rather he created a hypothesis. Can there be a category of Dalit Muslims? Now, another aspect of Professor Imtiaz is as an institution builder. So he is not only academician, he is not only an armchair revolutionary or actually a professor, rather he is having an interaction, and then he is even then carrying on with the public intellectual work, last but not the least, as an institution builder. As an institution builder, and I quote him directly, he was a member. He himself wrote that he was a member of the committee appointed by the UGC chairman to select the universities when the centers of the study of social exclusion, where actually it should be located. After actually recommending the names of the universities where the Center for Exclusion, and MANUU was one of them, that actually he recommended that there should be located, but he went on to evaluate also. It's not only that he recommended, but he went for the scrutiny that whether the chairs are functioning properly or not. And he writes, in his own words, the centers at Amritsar and GRG University were functioning very well. However, the centers at Maulana Azad Urdu University and Jamia Millia have not taken off yet. So far, Jamia Millia Islamia has not been able to appoint a permanent professor. Now, such was his candid report. That's not mincing any word. That look, if I can give a good report and I can have a lifafa, that's fine. But nothing of like that. He gave a very candid report so that an institution can be elaborated. Now, last but not the least, I think he stood for the junior colleagues as well. As Professor Arvinder was talking about, that how he has been supervising the students, no problem. But when the junior faculties were not given their due, he stood by them. And, in the last period, he used to write Facebook posts also in support of the many of the actually, things he wrote Facebook. Now, one such Facebook when he wrote, his very good friend, Ved Prakash Vatuk, who is now 91 years old, reminded Professor Imtiaz, where Imtiaz, do you remember how M.N. Srinivas has harassed you? The harassment story was actually not divulged by him, and nowhere he has written. So I think that deep respect he has for his students, but others have tried to highlight that how he was harassed, and that is why he could not complete his PhD in Delhi University, or he was not inducted in Delhi University, though actually there were other. So we can look at actually that how, this journey of an academician has different shades. One, he is producing knowledge, no doubt, but he is not only producer of knowledge, but he is also rearing the institution. Wherever actually it is required, he contributes his services to the institution building. And last but not the least, he is a good colleague as well. Now, these three very important aspects with 6 epochs of the journey, let me just dwell upon the young professor and old Professor Imtiaz. Young Imtiaz Ahmed, a 26-year young man, how he challenges the established professors, academicians alone, on his own. I remember how he responded and challenged M.B. Clenard and Joe Elder. These are 2 professors who have written an article in 1966, in 1960, I think 64 or so, where they challenged, they tried to deconstruct the development of Indian sociology. Now, it was here that young Imtiaz, who was visiting fellow at that time, challenged these 2 stalwarts. You can imagine, this is a 4-page article. This is a 4-page article, but it has 70 references. So nowadays, the students write one article and there may be 7 references. But he has a 4-page article, but 70 references. So I think, friends, as young scholars, this is a lesson that when you are trying to put an argument, substantiate that with a number of references. Therefore, I think it's very important for us to understand young Imtiaz as a student, that how he was trying to produce knowledge. Now, the significance of this paper is, therefore, young Imtiaz Ahmed was very meticulously problematizing the formulations of the senior established sociologist of America. And young Imtiaz said that, and I quote him, according to Elder and Clenard, Indian sociologists reject Western empirical sociology on the ground that it is too materialistic, and are trying to develop an Indian sociology rooted in the classical philosophical assumptions. As a young sociologist, Imtiaz Ahmed argued at the outset that both Elder and Clenard have not been able to take into account the different theoretical tendencies in the contemporary sociology of India, and that is why they are trying to distort the practice of sociology in India. Therefore, Imtiaz Ahmed, the young Imtiaz, started responding. And he responded through both the secondary data and the primary data. It is not that he was responding only at one level. He collected the secondary data and primary data. Let me just dwell upon the secondary data. He took for answering Elder and Clenard, he took T.B. Bottomore, 1962 article, Sociology of India, and said that, look, what they are trying to argue that it is only monolithic, it is only one type of theory which the Indian sociologists have incorporated. He said, no, according to T.B. Bottomore, there are four theories which are being actually taken by the Indian sociologists. Simultaneously, they are taking four types of formulation. The first, he talked about D.P. Mukherjee and A.K. Saran, R.K. Mukherjee. They are talking about philosophical trend in, that is, Lucknow School of Sociology. The second, Indological trend led by G.S. Ghure, A.R. Pillai, P.N. Prabhu, K.M. Kabadia, Iravati Kharve, and others. The third is social anthropological terms dealing with the religious and legal literature, producing the book view and the field view both. And last but not the least, the American sociological formulations. So these were the four very important, the theories which the Indian sociologists were using. Now, coming to the empirical data, he collected actually this empirical data from 5 journals. You can imagine a young sociologist talking about 5 journal articles, and mind you, there was no Google at that time. There was no internet. And how he must have access, we can understand the prolificness of Professor Imtiaz. Now, 5 journals published in India, and they took note that how Indian sociologists and actually journals, they are producing knowledge on different particular theoretical background. Now, in this, one article was Sociological Bulletin, the other was the Eastern Anthropologist, and Man in India, and then International Journal for Comparative Sociology and Economic Weekly. It was not Economic and Political Weekly, that was Economic Weekly at that time. And according to Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, if you analyze the nature of Indian sociology only on the basis of Sociological Bulletin, you will automatically get the picture that Indian sociology had historical orientation, but it also has empirical data as well as it has a theoretical premise both. So, he goes on to actually talk about that what is the segregated data of the articles. Now, in this actually, he says that close to this data, 5 minutes सुन करके मेरा सब topsy turvy हो गया मामला, कोई बात, okay. So he argued that in Eastern Anthropologist and Economic Weekly, we find 5% of the articles based on historical data. Only 5% of the articles were based on historical data. Such meticulous analysis of articles, what is the nature of the articles, and in percentage, can you imagine an academician working like this today? How many articles have been produced in Sociological Bulletin? I don't think so that a young scholar will talk about. And 60% of the articles were based on empirical data collected by the author themselves. Here I'm reminded of Japanese sociology. And in Japanese sociology, after Second World War, the Japanese actually rejected all the Western theories. They rejected all the Western theories and they went to what actually C. Wright Mills calls as raw empiricism. They started collecting the data on their own without any theory. And it is here that actually Professor Imtiaz Ahmed telling us that how these people are talking about empirical data. You are saying that we are talking about theory, we are talking about philosophy, we are talking about history. Look, there is 60% data. So as a young sociologist, he was fighting. Last point I will make of a young sociologist, that allegation made by the Clenard and authors, they say that Indian sociology is rural. Indian sociology is rural. Now, according to Imtiaz Ahmad, very politely argued that a country whose nearly 80% of the population lives in villages, can there be a urban sociology of them? Or there will be a rural sociology, which is the real outcome. So there is, friend, long answers to it. There is long answer to it, but I am cutting the long story short that as a young scholar, without, I am not suggesting that you should take it, without any fear for his future, he was trying to take mental with the established social scientists. That was the young revolutionary Imtiaz Ahmad, actually, we come to know from the articles. The older Imtiaz Ahmad, I think, much settled in his life and ready to take very important theoretical premises. I will only give you one example, that when people were accepting the term modernity or modernization as it is, I have not read actually, except him, that who tried to problematize the term modern itself, modernization. And he says that I do not buy the definition of modernization as given by the Westerners. How and what? I will just quote from him so that actually I am not off the mark. Modernization is a multi-dimensional concept, and there is an optimistic and progressive ring about it. For many, it means progress and forward movement, being with the times, and the opposite of the modern and traditional meaning, holding back, moving backward. The traditional approach has been to consider tradition and modernity as polar opposite, that means binary, and mutually exclusive, and assume to be the modern is to be in the present, and also deciding what is in the future. But there is a problem with this. According to Professor Imtiaz Ahmad, there is a problem with this. What is the problem? He says that modernization is linked with the population, and actually population of the developed countries. The way the developed countries have imbibed certain characteristics of modernization, that may not be necessary with the population of the developing countries. And the developing countries' population, they do not give that utilitarian function to the characteristics with which you become modern. So my association with the characteristics, you have to be tech savvy, you have to have gadgets, you have to have modern education, all that actually is modern. But he says that it is not with the population that they accept that these are modern, and therefore tradition institutions also give certain aspects to the modernity. Now, in that context, I think, three very important problems which he highlighted. I will only give you one or two, because that becomes, very important in the sense that methodological terms and conceptual terms. Because people think, and I think because this this seminar is on methodology and talking about Muslim studies, I think his intervention, as far as concepts are concerned and as far as methodology is concerned, is important. I define methodology with very simple terms. Methodology is different from method. I keep on telling my friends, please don't misjudge, or actually don't equate methodology and method, because methodology tells you 4 very important things. One, it talks about the subject matter. And here, when we are talking about Muslim studies, I think we are talking about the subject matter. That is one, the question of methodology, subject matter. Second, it tells you about the subject matter, how it is constituted. So how we will constitute the subject matter of Muslim studies will be simply taken from Professor Imtiaz Ahmad's writing and speeches. The third, it talks about the concepts and procedures, and it will give you the concepts and procedures of the studies which we are talking about. And last, it will give you the limits. So methodology will give you 4 very important components of Dalit studies. Now, in this context, the subject matter, how will you evolve the subject matter? And for that, I think definition of the Muslims, which Professor Imtiaz Ahmad has talked about in his text, is very important. That actually, whether Muslim is a monolithic whole, as actually being termed out to be. And for him, it is not. That how plurality in Islam throws actually different types of Muslims itself. On the one hand, if you take Ummah, that is there, fine. But internally, how they are differentiated, I think definition of Muslim will become core of your study, because that will give you also say contour. The second is the perspective with which you are going to study. Muslim studies will also have not only the subject matter, but it will also have the perspective with which you are going to evolve. And in that context, I think Professor Imtiaz Ahmad talks about the confusion regarding the Muslims in India, and the actually, talking about modernization, is that conceptually modernization and methodologically modernization, there is a difficulty in comprehending the concepts itself. And therefore, we will have to go beyond this instrumentalist definition of the modernization. Now, last but not the least, finally, the source of confusion has been ambiguity inherent in the phrase of Muslim in India. Muslim in India, and he tries to talk about that if the accent is more in Muslims, then the assumption is that we are talking about Muslims of the world, and then we are trying to analyze Muslims of the whole world. How the Muslims of the whole world, whether it is actually, in different parts of the world, and Muslims of India are pitched against them. But when we have India as an accent, then he argues that the difference will be then we are comparing the social change in comparison to the other minorities in the Indian society, like Christians, like Sikhs, and others. Therefore, friends, I think on theoretical basis, and also, he is very candid and is very critical that when there is no theoretical basis to understand Hindu social order yet. And he, in his article, he writes that, till now, there has not been a comprehensive conceptualization and theoretical basis to have Hindu as a whole. You have not tried to develop a theory of Hindu as a whole. So how can you develop the theory of a Muslim whole? Now, therefore, I think there is lot of deficits in the Indian sociology. And as an Indian sociologist, I think he wants to go beyond the existing literature. I think that is where Professor Imtiaz Ahmad's actually work has not taken the light of the day is still. And we have tried to segment him, we have tried to reduce him. But I think with this seminar, I think I congratulate that his larger ideas as a sociologist of India will catch the imagination on the whole. But, you know, I just want to end with this couplet which Professor Imtiaz Ahmed wrote on his Facebook the last day. You know, I think some of the last day were there. I read this. This is, I think, Narayan Chakbast from Lucknow. Chakbast is a shair from Lucknow, and I think he was friend of Professor Imtiaz Ahmed. Zindagi kya hai? Zindagi kya hai? Anasir mein zahur tartib. Zindagi kya hai? Anasir mein zahur tartib. Maut kya hai? Inni azza ka pareshan hona. I think he was a materialist. And the meaning of this share is that when the matter come together at a particular angle, life is born. When the matter dissociate, life is gone. So he was materialist in this share also. So I think let us actually celebrate his sayings, his writings, and his speeches in the same way. I am leaving actually that when he said that, look, why Muslims do not like Khaldun, Ibn Khaldun, because Khaldun thinks himself very great, you know, and therefore Muslims in India don't like him. So, but I think there has been a seminar on Khaldun also, and Sorokin talked about that if anybody could be understood as a father of sociologists, it has to be Khaldun. So I think in that context, if Indian sociology is talking about a minority sociologist of India, it has to be Imtiaz Ahmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Vivek Kumar, for such a wonderful talk. Now I request Dr. Zia to open the house with some discussions with his own remarks.
I wish that we should give a great and warm clap for the lecture we had today for Professor Vivek Kumar. इससे बेहतर तरीक़ा नहीं होता किसी भी स्कॉलरशिप को याद करने के लिए और उससे सीखने के लिए. इम्तियाज़ अहमद के 3 डायमेंशंस को सर ने पेश किया. स्टूडेंट के नाते हमने सिर्फ उन्हें यंग ओल्ड के तौर पर देखा, और वो भी तब जब हम उनके डायरेक्ट स्टूडेंट नहीं थे, बल्कि हम वो सब स्टूडेंट थे जो उनको सराहते थे, उनको पढ़ते थे, और सालों तक उन्हें ग्रेजुएशन से PhD तक उनके अंडरस्टैंडिंग को यूज़ किया. और शायद अभी भी हम लोग उस पर सवाल इसीलिए कर रहे हैं. तो इम्तियाज़ अहमद को यंग देखना है तो हमें उनकी राइटिंग्स पढ़नी होगी, और विवेक कुमार के प्रेजेंटेशन में हमें दिखता है कि वो पूरे हंच 1960s 70s में, वो कैसा इंसान होगा जिसने 1960s में इन मुद्दों पे सवाल करना शुरू किया. He started questioning the Indian social structure, doing empirical work on Muslims in the country. We have no other persons than Imtiaz Ahmed working on this very particular area. दूसरी important बात यह है, we have references of people who were British anthropologists talking about Muslims, but most of the references were all like categorizing, giving names, nomenclature, that what kind of social groups in India you have. तो मुसलमान कैसे थे, थर्स्टन ने बहुत सारे documentations किए हैं, लेकिन मुसलमानों की ज़िंदगी कैसी है हिंदुस्तान में in comparison to other religious communities, other social groups, ये हमें sociological writing से दिखाई देती हैं. इम्तियाज़ अहमद ने वो पेंडोरा बॉक्स पहली बार खोला, तो हमें ये लगता है कि पूरे हिंदुस्तान में ऐसा मजबूत स्कॉलरशिप पेश करने वाला और कोई नहीं था जिसने इस ऐसे मुद्दों को सामने लाया. ख़ास तौर से जब पूरे हिंदुस्तान की सोशियोलॉजी रूरल सोशियोलॉजी के तौर में देखी जा रही थी, हिंदुस्तान में मुसलमानों का उसमें कहीं नज़र नहीं आना था, वो नज़र नहीं आ रहे थे. मुस्लिम सोशल स्ट्रक्चर कैसा होता है सिर्फ लोगों को इस्लाम के नाम पर जानते थे, और इस्लाम को जब हम चार्ल्स क्रूजमैन के एक आर्टिकल आप पढ़ेंगे 2019 में उन्होंने लिखा, ही फोकसेस मोर ऑन सोशियोलॉजी ऑफ इस्लाम, सोशियोलॉजीज ऑफ इस्लाम, राइट. वो इस्लाम के उन पर्सपेक्टिव के बारे में बात करें जो ग्लोबल मुस्लिम्स मानते हैं, बट व्हाट अबाउट द मुस्लिम्स इन साउथ एशिया, व्हाट अबाउट द मुस्लिम्स इन इंडियन सोसाइटी. सो थ्रू दीज राइटिंग व्हाट प्रोफेसर विवेक वाज शेयरिंग, दैट इट गिव्स लॉट ऑफ space for all of us to examine हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमान कैसे होते हैं, वो क्या कुर्ता पैजामा वाले ही होते हैं या वो पढ़ने लिखने वाले भी होते हैं, या उनके बारे में किताबें जो लिखी गई हैं क्यों सिर्फ मदरसों की तस्वीर उनकी किताबों में रहती हैं, जब हम मुसलमानों की किताब, मुसलमानों की एम्पिरिकल रिसर्च भी करते हैं। क्या मुसलमानों के घर में मुसलमान ख़ानदान नहीं है? क्या मुसलमान शादी नहीं करते? क्या मुसलमान कोहेबिटेशंस नहीं करते? क्या मुसलमानों में किसी तरह के डिफरेंसेस नहीं हैं? ये तमाम रिफ्लेक्शंस जो उनके राइटिंग्स में दिखती है और हमने इस प्रेजेंटेशन में देखा, why we don't find them very important in re-examining Muslims in India? The second question he is posing for us, that the intellectual imtiaz which brought in one aspects of Muslims in India through the research in Uttar Pradesh. तो हम लोगों के साथ बहुत बड़ी एक क्राइसिस रही है when we started talking Indian Muslims in southern India, that we started using that same framework which is there for Muslims in northern India for southern India Muslim, because Muslims in our South India are not as such occupationally differentiated which is there in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Hindi heartland. तो इसको कैसे समझें? ये दूसरा सवाल है जो विवेक सर को चूँकि वक्त नहीं मिली, ही वांटेड टू ब्रिंग इन आई थिंक दोज पर्सपेक्टिव जो उनकी दूसरी जर्नी में है, और उनकी बायोग्राफिकल स्केच हमें ये मदद करता है देखने में कि एक स्टूडेंट अपने समाज को पहले देखना शुरू करता है। तो वो स्टूडेंट जो साउथ इंडिया में पैदा हुआ है, वो स्कॉलर जो साउथ इंडिया की सोसाइटी को देखकर रिसर्च करना शुरू किया है, क्या वो एक मॉडल अलग पेश कर रहा है इंडियन मुस्लिम्स की, या उसी मॉडल को यूज़ करेगा? एंड परहैप्स दैट इज़ वन ऑफ द रीजन दैट मेनी रिसर्च पेपर्स आर बीइंग आस्क्ड टू revise that where is the theoretical background to study Muslims, whereas we have a very hard hitting questions. You also do not have theoretical framework for studying Hindu as a whole, right? So how can you have Muslim as a whole? And that was the argument Professor Imtiaz has been putting all through his life. And when I had a personal interaction with him as a young, old Imtiaz and very young boy Zia in campus, we all the time we have seen him getting a talk which was very informal for the youngest students. JNU का एक कॉर्नर था जो बहुत ही मशहूर था, बहुत ही खूबसूरत हाउस थी वो, इम्तियाज़ चौक कहते थे, और हम लोग ने उसे एक अच्छे खूबसूरत गार्डन के तौर पर भी देखा उस घर के बाहर, और हम कहते हैं आपको अगर ढूंढना है तो आप देखेंगे वही एक घर होगा जहाँ खूबसूरत बाग होगा। तब इम्तियाज़ से मेरी बहुत कम बातें होती थी क्योंकि हम लोग अलग सेंटर में थे, लेकिन उनसे जब भी बात हुई आप देखेंगे वो पूछते थे आप क्या काम करोगे। ये जो सवाल उन्होंने अपने स्टूडेंट के लाइफ में शुरू किया, जो फर्स्ट सवाल प्रोफेसर विवेक ने जनरेट किया है, उनके आखिरी टॉक तक हमने यही सुना है। जब 2018 में वो मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी में तशरीफ़ लाए, वो व्हील चेयर पर थे। दोस्तों याद रखेंगे वो व्हील चेयर पर थे और दिल्ली से वो हैदराबाद सिर्फ इसलिए आए थे, हमने कहा था बहुत से स्टूडेंट आपको डायरेक्टली सुनना चाहते हैं, और उसके बाद वो सिलसिला कई स्टूडेंट का उनके साथ जुड़ा रहा, जो ओल्ड इम्तियाज़ की स्कॉलरशिप को बढ़ते हुए दिखाता है, वो कम होते हुए हमने कहीं नहीं देखा। आखिरी बात जो उन्होंने पॉलिटिकली बहुत सेंसिटिव किया लोगों को, हम स्टूडेंट थे JNU में उस दौर में, पसमानदा मुस्लिम की बात बिहार से हो रही थी और यहाँ इन्होंने एक हाइपोथेसिस दलित मुस्लिम्स की जो की थी। तमाम हमारे दोस्त उस वक्त के इस मुद्दे के पीछे भाग रहे थे, लेकिन ये सवाल हम सबके जहन में था, भाग तो रहे थे सब पॉलिटिकल मूवमेंट के लिए, लेकिन कोई एग्जामिन नहीं कर रहा था मुस्लिम सोसाइटी के एम्पिरिकल कंसर्न्स को देखते हुए। यही वजह है कि अनवर अली को हम जब पॉलिटिकल फेस में नहीं देखते हैं, ये मुद्दा दब गया है, ये मुद्दा बहुत ज़्यादा वॉलेटाइल नहीं दिख रहा है। हमारी जिम्मेदारी है कि हम उन तमाम कंसर्न्स को जो तीसरे फेज में विवेक साहब रेज कर रहे हैं, रिसर्च करिए लाएँ, एंड दैट इज़ मोर अबाउट द social anthropology of Muslims in the country. The last point which I think that can open up more discussion is the methodological nuances of studying Muslims. We never had. I wrote a piece and sent to EPW, and the only revision they have asked, and they asked if you don't revise, we will not be able to accept, was that what are the theoretical foundations you put for studying minority studies. So वेस्ट की माइनॉरिटी स्टडीज़ की जो थ्योरेटिकल फ्रेम है वो हिंदुस्तान के माइनॉरिटीज़ के लिए फिट नहीं होती है, बट इंडियन सोशियोलॉजिस्ट ने अनफॉर्चुनेटली कोई ऐसा फ्रेम हमें फ्राहम नहीं किया, मौजूद नहीं किया। तो आप कैसे उसे हैंडल करेंगे, ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल है जिसमें हम सब हमेशा देखते रहते हैं। और इसी वजह कर आखिरी बात मुझे बहुत अहम लगी पूरे प्रेजेंटेशन में कि बहुत सीरियस सवाल है, और मुझे तो ज़ाती तौर पर हमेशा लगा है, क्योंकि मैं स्टूडेंट ऑफ मुस्लिम स्टडीज़ बहुत बाद में बना, मैंने पहले दलित स्टडीज़ की पूरी ज़िंदगी पीएचडी के दौरान में काफ़ी काम किया उस पर। ग्रेजुअली जब इन रिसर्च को पढ़ा तो हमें सोशियोलॉजी ऑफ मुस्लिम स्टडीज़ को देखा, एंड आई स्टार्टेड ट्राइंग टू रीड एंड राइट सोशियोलॉजी ऑफ पॉवर्टी इन इंडिया, जो जिस फ्रेज़ को विवेक सर अपने पेपर में ला रहे हैं, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। मुझे लगता है सोशियोलॉजी, हिंदुस्तान की सोशियोलॉजी बहुत गरीब है इस मामले में कि उन्होंने हिंदुस्तानी कम्युनिटीज़ के लिए कोई मेथोडोलॉजिकल और थियोरेटिकल फ्रेमवर्क मजबूत पेश नहीं किया है। और यही वजह है कि इन तमाम रिसर्च को इसी नाम पर मार्जिनलाइज की जाती हैं बड़े बड़े जर्नल में, क्योंकि ये एक थियोरेटिकल मेथोडोलॉजिकली तरीके से अच्छे से पेश नहीं करता है। मुझे 4 दिन पहले कोई कह रहे थे कि आपके जर्नल, किसी एक रिसर्चर के पेपर को जर्नल वालों ने ये सिर्फ कह के रोका कि आप इसे माइनॉरिटी अफेयर एक जनरल है वहाँ भेजिए, ये इसमें नहीं आएगा, सब्जेक्ट में नहीं फिट होता है। दैट इज़ द प्रॉब्लम वी हैव एज अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी एंड सोशल साइंसेज, दैट वाई वी शुड नॉट बी ब्रेकिंग दैट स्टीरियोटाइप बाय डूइंग मोर सीरियस रिसर्च, दैट any studies which interrogates through the empirical data, bringing methodology through the data collection process, should be part of social sciences in any discipline. So for Indian sociology, therefore we need to also critically examine our own subject within the country and within ourselves. And these are some questions I think in this paper I found very, very strong, very, very powerful. Ibn Khaldun कि सर जो आपने जाते वक्त ये बात कही, इब्न खल्दून को सोशियोलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट ने ओन ही नहीं किया बल्कि उसे सब्जेक्ट करिकुलम में ले आए हैं मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी में। और हम ये कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि इब्न खल्दून की राइटिंग्स को हम रिसर्च के ज़रिए, पढ़ाने के ज़रिए उसको और ज़्यादा लेकर आएँ, और वो डिफरेंसेस अगर मौजूद है डिस्कार्ड करना और अपनाना, यही तो रियलिटी, सोशल रियलिटी को जो हमें ज़िंदा रखती है। मुझे उम्मीद है कि आप लोग बहुत सारे सवाल अब स्पीकर के सामने रखेंगे और इस सेशन को बहुत इंगेजिंग। थैंक यू फॉर गिविंग मी दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी, चेयर साहब।
Though we thought of inviting few questions, but we have to respect the nitty-gritties of different types of sessions. This is a memorial lecture. This lecture is in the honor of a sociologist who has contributed a lot. So we will take the questions during lunch time. Professor Vivek will be available with us during that time as well. So you know that whenever we generally attend the memorial lectures, for a student like me, just try to learn those memorial lectures are evaluated on 3 grounds. Whether the lecture was relevant, it was covering the aspect or nuances of the scholar on whose memory the discussions was being made. The second aspect which I always explore in the content of the speaker is whether that lecture was of inspirational quality, whether through his discussions and lectures bringing certain aspect of the person concerned so that the young generations could feel inspired. And the third aspect we generally look at into that, whether that discussion was accessible to the broad generations of the audience sitting in the hall. So students are there, the scholars are there, the contemporaries of Professor Imtiaz Ahmed is there, whether it was accessible to each one of them, the students from science to social sciences and arts. And on all these grounds, I personally felt that Professor Vivek Kumar did great justice to that. And I must congratulate that a student like me was really inspired the way he was speaking. So, you know that Zia has already given the nuances that understanding Imtiaz Sahab in his own context, bringing the biographical aspect where we are trying to understand a scholar who was beginning his career and his struggles were there. Lot many aspects were involved into which really inspired us. So this talk in the honor of a visionary scholar, Professor Imtiaz Sahab was being eloquently put. So Vivek ji has eloquently woven the rich tapestry of sociological inquiry made by Professor Imtiaz Ahmed and tried to connect with the contemporary aspects. In fact, the continuity that what Imtiaz Saab has left, a continuity is still being maintained based on his legacy. My final thing is that we as a student of contemporary times must carry forward the legacy of Imtiaz Ahmed with a commitment to foster a more inclusive sociology so that we can understand the world contemporaries' problems in a more conceptual, methodological, and realist empirical sense as well. So he was a blend of all being empiricist and qualitative scholar. Thank you, Professor Vivek Kumarji, for bringing almost holistic nuance of Imtiaz Ahmed Saab into your discussions, and I'm looking for many more opportunities to engage with you, and so that our students who are sitting here waiting for some of their queries to be quenched by you in a very open discussions. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. I request Farah to bring bouquet and memento. We will honor our chair of this session. Dr. Ziauddin will give bouquet and memento to Dr. Afrosal. I request Shakil to bring bouquet. Bouquet. Dr. Ziauddin will give bouquet to Professor Vivek Kumar. This is specific to this, your special effort to deliver this lecture. Okay. Now I invite my colleague, Dr. Vivekananda Nayak, to offer a vote of thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. It is my pleasure to give a vote of thanks. पहले तो साहिद जी, thank you so much for conducting this program in a time specific manner. मुझे बहुत खुश है और गर्व भी है इसी सेशन के लिए, क्योंकि मेरे गुरुजी प्रोफेसर विवेक कुमार है, जिसको मैं धन्यवाद से तो भरपूर नहीं कर पाऊंगा, क्योंकि वो मुझे सिखाए हैं कैसे लिखना है, कैसे एडिट करना है, कैसे आइडिया जनरेट करना है. एंड जब कॉल आ रहे थे तो बहुत सारे लोग पूछे विवेक भाई आ रहे हैं क्या, बिकॉज ही इज कंटेम्प्रेरी ऑल्सो इन दिस मानू कैंपस, सो दे विल इंटरेक्ट विथ हिम. थैंक यू सर फॉर वंडरफुल लेक्चर. और आपका जो एक आर्टिकल है, हाउ इनइक्वालिटी इज इंडियन सोसाइटी, इंडियन सोशोलॉजी, that article gives a lot of methodological understanding about Indian society. I think so each sociologist or social scientist should read that article in EPW, which is very relevant for understanding Indian society. जैसे एक कह है, जहाँ 90% लोग रूरल सोसाइटी में रहते हैं, बट अर्बन सोशोलॉजी को इम्पोर्टेंस दे रहे हैं. सो ये सारी चीज़ को हम लोग को ध्यान रखकर आगे को जैसे बहुत सारे रीडिंग का वो कोट किए हैं टीबी बटमर से लेकर, और उसी टाइम में 1970 में कैसे इम्तियाज़ अहमद इंडियन सोसाइटी को देखते थे. हम अभी कहाँ पहुँच चुके हैं, लेकिन उसी नज़रिया में हम लोग नहीं देख रहे हैं, क्योंकि हमारा एकेडमिक मेथोलॉजी को और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग करना है. तो सर आपका जो लेक्चर था, इट वाज वेरी रेलेवेंट, एंड इन फ्यूचर वी विल टेक योर इंस्पायरेशन to build this Muslim studies in Indian sociology. Thank you, sir, for coming all the way to MANUU. And thanks to Afroz sir, he's our near and dear one, and also head of the department in political science. He gave also a lot of idea to us. Thank you, Afroz sir. And lastly, our head, Ziauddin sir, he gave a lot. He also faced a lot of problem in methodologically way how to represent the Muslim studies. So thank you for critical analysis. I hope, and my best wishes for this developing this department in a in this direction, so that ऑल ओवर इंडिया कैन लुक अप आवर डिपार्टमेंट, और मानू को इसी मामले में हमको जानना कोशिश करेंगे. थैंक यू सो मच. थैंक यू.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Vivek. Thank you, everyone, for your patient listening and understanding. After break, we will have a plenary session here itself.